performance women in Ram Leela of Ramnagar. Dr. Singh has published interviews with Indian women performance in the Indian Theatre Journal, contributed in 4 chapters in the Routledge Handbook of Asian Theatre, edited by Sion Liu, 2016, and was the guest editor for the special issue of the journal Gender Issues Springer 2018. She has also served as the conference chair for the Future Women conference held in Malaysia in 2018, Colombo, Sri Lanka in 2019, and in Bangalore in 2020, and is the president of the Asian African Association for Women, Gender, and Sexuality. Welcome, ma'am. And for further proceedings, I invite Dr. Naveen Mehta, sir.
Now, Dr. Naveen, you are muted.
Well, it is rightly said in one of the Sanskrit verses that Swadeshe Pujyate Raja Vidwan Sarvat Pujyet. So today, I think we are really have the privilege to have a very eminent, highly acclaimed, and very down to earth. Whatever I can understand about her persona or personality. So it's our good fortune, and especially the good fortune of our students, to have Professor Dr. Anita Singh. With due respect and regard, ma'am, I invite you to deliver your talk on John Ruskin's Unto the Last. Madam, please do away the honor.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen, for your introduction and for inviting me here. And so it's a great pleasure to be here with you. And thank you, Astha, for that introduction. And thank you, students, for joining. So I will stop my video and I'll share my screen. So this is one text, as Naveen told you, that I'm doing with you. So I will share my screen with you. So is my screen visible?
Yeah, madam, it's visible, but the presentation is, I think, yet to start. Yet to begin.
Okay. I'll do that. Okay.
Now we can see.
Yes. Now you can see it well?
Yeah.
Yes. So now I cannot see you. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself, or if you feel that you're not able to hear me or there is a technical, you can tell me, okay, because I'm not able to see you now. So
Yeah,
this is, yes. So we have very little time and we have to do this huge text. So I'll start head on so that we can take some questions at the end of it. Okay. So this is one text that I'm doing with you today, Unto This Last, by John Ruskin, as has been told by you. And Ruskin, we know, was a very influential art critic belonging to the mid to the late 19th century in England. And he's chiefly known for his two very important work, that is Modern Painters. When we think of Bond, we think of John Ruskin, we think of these two works, Modern Painters, and this was a book of art, and the other book of architecture, that is Seven Lamps of Architecture. And of course, he has written on so many subjects, as we will be seeing that this work that we are going to take up is on a very different subject altogether. And he has been very influential, not only for Tolstoy, Marshall Proust, but also to Gandhi. And probably that is why John Ruskin is so important and dear to us. Why do we keep remembering John Ruskin? Is because Gandhi also was influenced by Ruskin, and he borrowed and brought so many good things from Ruskin. Okay. So this particular work, Unto This Last, was first published between August and December, and it was actually in 1860. That is late mid, or one would say late 19th century, in a journal in which is called Cornhill Magazine. Okay, if you remember, some of Hardy's works were also published in Cornhill Magazine. I'm not very sure, but yes, I think Hardy's novels were also published in Cornhill magazines. So there were 4 essays basically that were published in Cornhill magazine, which Ruskin was later on to compile them together as a book. So Unto This Last is actually the 4 essays that Ruskin wrote for this Cornhill magazine that was later on, as I said, brought as a book. The title of this work, Unto This Last, it refers to a parable of workers. It is taken from Bible. It is a biblical reference, and which refers to as Bible suggests, it talks about the 11th hour laborers in the vineyard. Okay, so what happens is when you're getting some work done, so your work is not complete, so you invite some more workers who come at the 11th hour. 11th hour literally now is a phrase which means at the last moment. So at the last moment you need some more workers, but when the payment is done, so all the workers, even the workers who have come at the 11th hour, they are also paid the same. Okay, so this is the literal translation. Biblically or religiously, we look at it as, in God's house, the early entrants, people who are always believers of God, or people who start believing in God late. Okay, so we have so many things that in Hindi also you have der aaye durust aaye. Okay, Bhagwan ke ghar der hai andher nahi. Even if you come late, God is ready to embrace you. So it's something like that. So if you are a late entrant in the house of God, God is still going to take you. Okay, so this is what this meaning of the word unto this last, till the last worker. Everybody should be paid equal. Okay, everyone should be treated equally. So this book very largely argues that whether it is economics, whether it is art, whether it is science, or any aspect of life, must have a foundation in morality. So here the basic crux of this line, I have underlined it also. So this is the basic crux of the essay, that everything, that life and living, one would say, should have foundation in morality. So the roots of our life and living should be morality and ethics. That is what he propagates for. That is what he vouches for in this essay, and generally in all his writings. And as I said, Gandhi was influenced by John Ruskin, and particularly this essay. So Gandhi also serialized a 9-part paraphrase of Ruskin's book into Gujarati in Indian Opinion, and in this journal called Indian Opinion. Later it was published as a pamphlet under the title Sarvodaya. We are all familiar with the term, welfare for all. And it was also later Gandhi's paraphrase was retranslated by Valji Govind Desai into Unto This Last, a paraphrase. Okay, so we see how Unto This Last has been so popular with us because of the message that it contains, because of the sound messages in morality that it contains. So the book it has a preface, and it has 4 essays, or one would say 4 chapters. So we will start with the preface, and then the first chapter is Roots of Honor, the Veins of Wealth. The third and fourth have Latin words, they are Latin phrases. The third is Qui Judicatis Terrain, which is a Latin phrase which translates at Ye who judge the earth, give diligent love to justice. So basically, it is justice for all, very loosely if you translate it. And Gandhi translates this chapter title as Even-Handed Justice. Justice, you have to have justice in everything that you do. But we should practice justice in whatever we do, whether we're doing business or whatever. Justice is something that should be the bedrock of all our values. Fourth chapter is Ad Valorem, again, which is a Latin phrase which means according to the value. Give the people according to the value. Like, for instance, I mean, this is also a term used in taxation. You are taxed as much as you are valued, your value and your tax. So give as to people as much as they are valued, and so on. We will see that when we get into the chapter, this would be explicated in larger detail. Now the preface, so slightly cluttered, but this I have abbreviated what is in the, I have, in some summarized what is in the preface. So the preface, Ruskin commented that his job was to define wealth, investigate its nature in a logical manner. So he will be talking about economics, he'll be talking about wealth, he'll be talking about money, he'll be talking about, owners and capitalists. So this is it. And how do we look at, wealth in a logical, ethical, moral way? So the second object of the book is to talk about acquisition of wealth. So one is wealth and the acquisition of wealth. So how do we understand wealth, and how do we understand the whole process of acquisition of wealth, acquiring wealth? How do we acquire wealth, and what are, as I said, the ground of contending with wealth? How do we look at wealth? And he says, so there are certain moral conditions. As I said, that he is not against wealth, he's not against acquisition of wealth, he's not against wealth. But he says both, underlying both wealth and acquisition of wealth, are certain moral conditions of the society. We have to abide by certain moral conditions of the society, particularly the quality of honesty. So you see, moral conditions, ethics, honesty, these are certain important things that Ruskin keeps on stressing. Ruskin laments that English have lost faith in honesty and its working power. So very often now also, I mean, people of all generation complain that people are not honest anymore and so on. And Ruskin was also doing that. And that is why Ruskin emphasized that a society, community, the nation should, or the world should be built on very sound foundations of morality and honesty and justice. And that is how a society can prosper. Ruskin also takes up the subject of organization of labor. He suggests that if we train our, captains of the industry, people who run industry, in honesty, the organization of labor will be easy. So an industry, has laborers to work. So if the relationship between the industrialist and the laborers are harmonious, if the industrialist takes care of the laborers, then everything is going to be all right, you know. And then he also suggests that there should be training schools for the youth. These schools should impart training to youth along with other skills. So primarily he focuses on three skills. One is laws of health and the exercises enjoined by them, habits of gentleness and justice, and the calling by which he is to live. So, what is the calling? That is the of ethics and morality, gentleness, justice, health. So, these are primary things that Ruskin says are important for our youth, and these are early training that we must give to our youth. Ruskin then further goes on to suggest in the preface that all kinds of manufacturing of all kinds of things. We know he's talking about wealth, he's talking about industries in this chapter. So he says he's not against private enterprises and even government enterprises. He's not too much in favor of socialism, one would say. He believes that there should be private players as well as public, players. So government and public enterprises should together coexist in a healthy competition, and this is what we are trying now. Public and private partnership, if you know that PPP model, the public-private partnership model, which should be in a very healthy way. The government then, he says, should also see that all things are manufactured and sold in their pure forms. So one is the combination of public and private organizations that work towards the betterment of the society, and the goods that are manufactured are in pure form. They are not corrupted, they are not mixed or so on. Okay, there's no contamination in what is sold. So goods that are pure, in its pure form, and customers are not fooled by the goods. Further, Ruskin suggests that any person out of employment should be given suitable work. So employment for all, and employment suited to a person's capability also. So he also emphasizes that employment is important, training is important, and employment suited to the person who is capable of certain work. So work should be distributed amongst all, and each qualified person should be given a proper qualified job suited to his capabilities and needs. Lastly, in the preface, he recommends a respectable system of social support for old and the destitute. So you see, he starts by wealth and by organizations, and how these organizations have to be managed, how do we train the youth, how jobs should be given. So it's a very huge spectrum that he takes up in the preface. And old and the destitute, they should be provided with home comfort, and they should live a life of honor instead of guilt. So older people should be taken care of. Basically, that is what we say. Thus, whatever is due to, so the summary of this chapter then is, the preface is, whatever is due to everyone must be allotted or given out to the person. So we should have a society that is just, where training, work, support to the older people, everything should be distributed in an even and ethical way. So he starts with preface with that. So the first chapter is Roots of Honor. So you can see the title also is indicative of what he is going to do in this particular chapter. So he begins with question regarding ideal relationship between workers and the masters. Like he had said also in the preface, that the owners of the organizations of industry should take care of the workers, should practice justice. So if the workers, if the owners of the institutes practice justice, then the workers will be satisfied, obviously. So this will constitute an ideal relationship, and the industry or the institution will flourish if the superiors who are at the helm of affairs take care of the workers. Then obviously there will be a harmonious relationship between the workers and the directors or the managers of the institute. So here he disagrees with the political economist of the 19th century. Now, here he makes a comment on the political economist of the 19th century. And who were the political economists of the 19th century that Ruskin is writing about and he's writing against or writing in critique of? They were John Stuart Mill, Thomas Robert Malthus, and David Ricardo. Okay, so basically, he is critiquing their philosophies. So, their philosophies were mostly utilitarian, Epicurean, and for the benefit of an individual person, atomistic. So they believe that people want to progress. So, everything is hinged on person's happiness. So and you must be aware of the laissez-faire policy, that open trade people. So the crux of the belief was everyone is wants self-aggrandizement. Everyone wants to promote his or herself. So these economists believe that social affections are accidental and disturbing elements in human society. Social affections are not really endurable. What is endurable is a person's greed. We all want to progress. We all want to make money. So greed and making money is what these political economists believe is the at the base of human drives and desires. So human drives and desires are motivated by greed. That is what they believed. And that is what free trade was important, allowing people to give an expression to their desire to add more to their money, add their money, multiply their money, and so on. And Malthus' idea of population was also something, that the greatest good of the greatest number, not for all. So here we are talking about good for all, unto this last, even the last person, justice for all, morality for all, care for all, for the destitute, for the young person, for everyone. So there is a uniformity in which, by which we treat the people who inhabit this world. But here the philosophy is the greatest good of the greatest number. So if they are poor people, they are a burden to the economy. So they should be decimated. They should be living in workhouses where they should not be allowed to multiply, give birth to more poor, allow more poverty to happen, and so on. So the whole idea of population explosion and freeing trade, allowing people to exercise and to multiply their greed, and so on. So Ruskin was against this philosophy of greed, philosophy that was based on greed. So Ruskin's theory of political economy is based on ethical code of life and individual conscience, as opposed to John Stuart Mill, Thomas Robert Malthus, and David Ricardo. Okay, so here Roots of Honor very clearly establishes how Ruskin was bringing in a philosophy that was going against or critiquing the prevailing philosophy of open trade, of greed, of self aggrandizement, and so on. And we know that imperialism also started from around this time. You know, you conquer nations and you control them and you loot them and so on. So, here to explain this, he borrows image from chemistry and he says the example of the use of pure nitrogen as a very manageable gas. Nitrogen in its pure form is very manageable. But when we deal with fluoride, it can cause havoc to us and our apparatus. But when it is in a contaminated form, it can create havoc. So, similarly, he says pure soul and the negation of soul. If the soul is pure, then the world is a manageable place, the world is a happy place, everyone is happy. But if there is a negation of soul, if we deny the soul, then world becomes a space of discrimination, disparity, dispute, and disharmony. Okay, so that is what he is trying to explain, that the philosophy of these 19th century thinkers was not correct, was tainted, and his philosophy is like the pure nitrogen and their philosophy is like the fluoride, the contaminated, which is creating havoc in the world. It takes up for discussion a vital problem concerning relationship between employer and employee. We have done this also in the earlier, that the relationship between the worker and the manager, if it is harmonious, if the employer understands the employee, then there can be no problem and productivity will also increase and everyone will be happy and everyone will be satisfied and happy and can live a comfortable life. All coordinate relationship between masters and servant depend on balance of justice. So how is this relationship going to be affected? By balance of justice. If the employer is just to the employee, then everything is very manageable. Then there is a very natural, one would say, affection between the employer and employee. Productivity will increase and this will be for the good of all, not the greatest good of the greatest number, but it would be the good of all. you know a term includes emotional relationship between one man and the other, so this will create an emotional relationship and ethical bonding between all humanities. So the bonding between all humanity, the bonds of justice, the bond of ethics, the bond of morality, is that what he is trying to aim at. Then he says, to the wages, how much should be paid, equality of wages, a good worker should be valued. So here then he brings the issue of value. If he is a good worker, he should be valued for the skill set that the worker has. And then what social pleasures can be, and if a person is dishonest, so certain kind of pressure should be exerted against this dishonest person. So basically he is here discussing how do we look at the worker and the employee and employer relationship. How do we look at wages? How do we punish people who are dishonest, and so on. So the main aim is to the creation of an ethical code of life, and to ensure that everyone has an individual conscious and not an individual self aggrandizement. So here he is not promoting individual self aggrandizement, but he's promoting individual consciousness, as opposed to the three thinkers that he has mentioned of the 19th century. Chapter 2 is the veins of wealth. So here Ruskin considers the concept of wealth and contrasts mercantile economy, the accumulation of wealth, with true wealth. Now he is contrasting two concepts. He says there is a mercantile economy and there is true wealth. So mercantile economy is simply accumulation of wealth through unfair means, through unjust means, where morality and ethics are not practiced. You accumulate wealth by disregarding your worker, not giving your worker due justice, not paying him as much as he demands, or as much as he deserves. Sorry, as much as he deserves. You should pay your worker as much as the worker deserves. When you do not do that, when you don't practice justice in your workplace, then it creates disharmony. So that kind of a mercantile economy where wealth is accumulated at the cost of ethics is not the right wealth. And then he distinguishes it between true wealth. So mercantile economy and true wealth. Mercantile is the tainted money, money that is earned from oppressing people, and true wealth is wealth that is accumulated on ethical grounds. So you are a factory manager, you are the owner of a company, you employ workers and you give them their due, you give them what they deserve, you practice justice in your factory, your workers are all happy, you earn your money, so you prosper, your workers are happy and they prosper. So that is the right way of accumulating and making money that he is here talking about. Whereas the mercantile economy, riches gives you power over other men. So here you are earning money in the wrong way, in unethical way, practicing injustice, and you gaining power over other men. So it doesn't allow you to have a loving ethical relationship to the people. So wealth, if acquired in an unjust way, uh, unjustly, creates a lot of injustice and power and control of one group over the other. But if wealth acquired in a just way with more moral and ethical codes has not power over other men but creates a loving relationship between individuals. Okay, so that is what he tries to explain, the veins of wealth. So veins, we have veins. So what are the veins of wealth? How do wealth, how is wealth can be seen as affecting the way we live our lives? Wealth affects the way we live our lives. So he sets up a distinction between, as I said, mercantile economy, ordinary commercial wealth, and political economy. And he says, how do we look at the wealth that is the true wealth? Ruskin redefines to mean commercial activity that benefits everyone, the state. So this wealth, the true wealth, benefits everyone, not just individual, but also the state. Whereas, on the other hand, mercantile economy or mercis is about individual wealth of accumulation. So as I said, the distinction between mercantile economy and true wealth. Mercantile economy only benefits individual. It is the wealth is accumulated on the basis of unjust behavior. Wealth is accumulated on the basis of oppression. Wealth is accumulated on the basis of unethical practices. Hence, the wealth is not really benefiting the state in the true sense of the term. Apparently, it appears that it is, but the true wealth is based on justice, true wealth is based on moral codes, and true wealth then affects the employer and the employee relationship, and it also affects state in a in an advantageous way. So he advocates for true wealth and not for a mercantile economy. So veins of wealth, you have this distinction between the two. Then further he critiques mercantile economy. He says getting richer makes another person poor. So in that mercantile economy, in that game of mercantile economy, one person is prospering, the other is becoming poorer. So it is a zero sum game. In this game, nobody is benefiting. It creates a very unequal society, a very unhealthy society, and it helps nobody. These are my true jewels. At the end of the essay he says, these are my true jewels. By saying this, he means that a nation can be productive and happy and have happy people if true wealth is practiced, if the wealth of the nation is distributed in a right and a just way. As I said, he is not a socialist. He doesn't believe that wealth should be distributed. He says it's okay that wealth will be unequal, some people will earn more than others, but it doesn't matter. And even he goes on to emphasize a good worker should be paid more than a very bad worker. It doesn't matter. But he says that there should be a principle of justice. Everybody should be there should be a principle of justice, and that will make people happy. A true wealth, the nation wealth, are its people. So he says, if people are happy, the nation is a happy place. The state prospers and everyone prospers. But if there is an inequality, there is discrimination, that nobody prospers, and then it becomes a zero sum game. The next chapter, that is the third chapter, is Q judicatus terrem, which, as I said, is a Latin phrase that translates as, ye who judge the earth, give diligent love to justice. Again, here he tries to explain justice in a more expansive way. Gandhi translates the chapter title as Even-Handed Justice. So again, as I said, here he is talking about how justice should be the bedrock of all our ideas, of all our practices, whether it is business practice or whatever we do. Justice should be the base of our interactions and executions. All our execution should be based on justice. He starts with King Solomon of the Bible. I don't know if you know the story of King Solomon. He was a very fine king, and he is chiefly known to be very just. There is one story that about two women. I don't know. I'm sure you have heard of this story. Two women come to King Solomon's court, and they say that uh, there's one child, and one woman says that it's my child, the other says it's my child. So one is actually a biological mother, the other is the mother who has reared up the child. So the woman who has reared up the child is really has a lot of love and affection to the child. Now the both women are claiming that the child is theirs. Okay, now what does King Solomon do? So King Solomon practices justice. He says that, okay, this child is belongs to you, and you also say that this child belongs to you. So what I do is I'll cut the child into two. So he is giving a judgment, or he plays a game, or he one would say he tries to he practices his justice by telling these women, I'll cut the child into two, and each one of you can take one part of the child, because you claim that it is your child and you claim it is your child. So one person, one woman, she cries out and she says, no, no, you give this child to the other woman. I don't really want the child. So the king immediately gives the child to this woman who has said that I don't need the child, you give the child to the other woman. So we don't know who the biological, mother is. We don't know who has reared the child, who is the biological mother. But the king's justice, or the king's meeting out this justice, is what he says is practicing justice. King doesn't know that who the biological mother is, but he says that the woman who is ready to give up the child to the other because she does not want to harm the child is the right person who can take care of the child. So according to kings, the king does not go and to investigate who's the biological mother, but he practices the principle of justice. The woman who can take care the child and see that no harm is done is the right mother of the child. So, so he says that King Solomon practiced justice, and he was a Jew merchant, but he was very successful in business also, simply because he practiced justice. Economists accept no notion of justice. He said, but very often economists do not practice justice. To follow the law is all they ask. So they follow law. So had Solomon followed law, he would have given the child to the biological mother only. Okay, because that is what the law says. What does the law say? That the child belongs to the biological mother. But principle of justice says that the child should go to the mother who takes care of the child, who sees that no harm is done. So Solomon deviated from uh, the principles of law to follow the principles of justice. So here Ruskin makes a distinction between law and justice. Law lays down certain things, but justice has certain other ideas. So he explicates this with the idea, with the judgment of Solomon, the distinction between justice and the distinction between law. But God holds us to higher standards, as Dante makes clear when he says, people in positions of authority must love justice diligently and not follow the law. So he says that very often we ignore justice and we simply follow law. So this distinction between law and justice is what Solomon has meted out. So he says that we practice law, but we do not practice justice. Ruskin tells us satirically, men of discretion prefer economic robbery to actual highway robbery because economic robbery is more profitable and less dangerous. So he says, men of discretion. He says there are many people now who are practicing robbery, like they don't pay taxes, they don't give their workers the right due. So this is also kind of a robbery, isn't it? So they are not highway robbers, because being highway robbers is dangerous and you can get into trouble, but they are also robbers. So he says these people who practice injustice, people who own factories, people who own institutions, they practice injustice, they are like robbers. So they do not practice highway robbery, but in a way they are worse than the highway robbers, or they are similar to the highway robbers, because they are also, what they are doing is they are also practicing forms of robbery. Okay. So Ruskin then turns to an analysis of just wages. These ideas are coming again and again. Money actually represents the right to ask someone to do a certain quantity of work for you. Just wages helps to distribute wealth more fairly and will help laboring class in advance. So just wages is people who deserve should get what they deserve. Their capabilities, their qualifications, their skills, and they should get what they deserve. So that is how we will have a just distribution of wealth among laboring class. All classes will be equally endowed with similar kinds of wealth if they deserve it. Ruskin, as I said, he rejects the idea of socialism and insists that there will always be inequality among individual. He is not a person who is advocating as all men should be absolutely equal. He says that there will be people who are richer than the others. But when you are living in a society, all actions of yours should be motivated by principles of justice, morality, and ethics. If you are an owner, or if you are an owner and you have laborers under you, practice justice, practice morality, and practice ethics, and that is how everyone will be happy and everyone will get what they deserve. Everyone will get what they deserve, and till the last person, everyone will be happy. Inequality will make some people rich, but those have most must be just. He says there will be inequality, there will be inequality of wealth, but that doesn't matter. If we all practice justice, everyone will be happy in that regard. The rich have no right to the property of the poor. Ruskin strongly suggests that the wealthy have accumulated their wealth by from the poor. So, if we are fair and just in our dealing, then the poor will also, if they do not, if people remain poor, or if a worker does not get enough, he will improve his skill set and then deserve what he is getting. So that will create a sense of satisfaction that whatever you're getting because you deserve this much, isn't it? For instance, like a teacher practices awarding marks, and if the marks are awarded in the right spirit, then students are satisfied. Then you don't have a sense of dissatisfaction that you deserved more. So as a student, you should also have the integrity to accept that you have got what you deserve. Okay, very often this could be from both sides. We believe that, oh, we should get more, but have you written as much as you deserve? So if we believe as individuals, if the workers also believe that they have to improve themselves so that they are awarded more money, and so if a just society is built where justice is practiced by everyone, then we come to a society that is equal, happy, ethical, and that helps everyone as a whole. So what Ruskin was actually trying to propagate was a society that can be a very happy place, which will be uh, which will benefit everyone. The last chapter is ad valorem, a Latin phrase meaning according to value. Again, we have done this. It's a business term pertaining to taxes. You are taxed according to what your valuation is, how you are valued. Ad valorem according to the value of your goods. So how much you are valued according to what you're valued. As I said, a student gets marked as much as he or she deserves, isn't it? In Ruskin's context, the title might be translated towards better understanding of the value of things. Ruskin shows that Mill's definition of produce is erroneous. The value is redefined that which enhances life and not that something that sells for the marketplace. So he says Mill talked about uh, how uh, you can increase your market value. So exchange value and uh, does a one would say a mercantile uh, economy functions, that you sell your products at a higher price than its valuation. What happens when you sell your products at a higher price than it's valued? You in turn gain a lot from that, but it creates a very unequal situation. So Ruskin is against this kind of a philosophy that merchants should hike up their rates and get valuation more than what they deserve. So this will, as I said, create an unequal society and create some people wealthy in an unhealthy way. Wealth must be understood in regard to the nature of the goods that are produced, how adequately they are distributed to the society, and how well these goods can be used. So wealth, as he said, is the nature of goods. So the goods that are produced must be fine, must not be contaminated, must not be faulty. So the goods, for instance, there is a merchant and he is producing headphones. So the headphones should be of very good quality, and the headphones should be priced at a price that is that has a proper valuation with a certain margin that the merchant is taking, not that the margin is 7 times 8 times more than what it should be valued. So the merchant is taking the right price for the headphones and giving the customers the right product. Okay, so then what happens? The relationship between the producer and the consumers become a just relationship. The producer produces goods which are good, which are sound, which are in good condition, and the consumer also buys goods which are in good condition and will help to and help and serve the consumer. So if this relationship is ethical, if there is justice, equal distribution in this relationship, then all other relationship will percolate, will this ethics will trickle down, and they are distributed through the society, and these goods can be used. So this, as I said, this relationship between the top level will percolate down, and this morality and the ethics will percolate to the lower level also. Ruskin's discussion of price encompasses exchange value and labor. No profit can come from exchange. So what, for instance, as I said, a pen is made. So how much has the labor been paid for making the pen, and how much is the merchant gaining from the pen? So these two things have to be on a very equal plane. So you give the labor the right due, and you get the right due from the pen that you sold. If there is a harmony between the exchange value and the value that is given to the labor, then, as I said, then this will trickle down, and laborers and the owners will have a harmonious and an ethical relationship. And there will be no exploitation. Basically, he is against the exploitation of the labor and exchanging goods at a very high price. So merchants do an unethical business by selling goods at a very high price and paying laborers very minimal cost. So he's against this kind of an economy, which Mill propagates, which Mill says that this is how society is. We all like to pay less and earn more. So he says that that is what the human nature is. But Ruskin is against this belief that human nature is so faulty. He says, no, human nature has to be corrected. If human nature is this, we have to practice this. Human nature is formed out of the practices that we create in a society, of things that we value, people that we value. So Ruskin says, if we have a society built on justice, built on ethics and morality, then human nature is also, adjustable to that. Human nature is that if we value this, then we are valuing human beings who are practicing justice, and so on. Labor is discussed as a means to understand good production comes from good forms of labor and requires good consumption. So, if the factory producer uh, values its labor, the labor will value the goods that the labor is making, and so on. So, there will be a loving relationship. There will be a very harmonious relationship between the labor and the capitalist. So, capitalist and the worker. Capital should be spent to achieve good production, which is finally good consumption, and not just accumulation of mere capital. So it's not just accumulation of more money, but how products are made, how labors are paid, how the owner sells the goods in a perfect form, and all this will create a very harmonious society. So uh, using one would say industries, using production, using labor, and the employer and employee relationship. Actually, Ruskin is talking about the foundations of society. Ruskin is appalled by economists who use the fear of overpopulation and deny social justice. Here, there is a reference to Malthus. Malthus says that population is increasing, and what do? We take care of the rich people, the healthy people, and we disprivilege the poor people, because poor people will only proliferate poverty. So we should not take care of the poor houses. We should not take care of the comforts of the poor, because poor have to be eradicated, because poor are creating a lot of problems, and poors give birth to poor, and so on. So Ruskin is against that. He believes that everyone should be taken care of. We can sustain a growing population through wise action and not cruelty. He says we should take care of the all our people, and not just people who are strong, healthy, and rich. Similarly, he says we will protect the environment because we need croplands to eat, and because people instinctively value natural beauty. So herein comes the whole ecosystem. It's not just people who need to be looked at in a more balanced and just through the lens of social justice, through the lens of morality, but also the environment. Similarly, we should not exploit environment, cut down trees because we need more furnitures, we need more woods, or have a lot of air conditioning, and so on. We should value cropland, we should value the environment, because we both live in a kind of a mutual relationship between nature and environment, and we have now seen what harming the environment has done to us. Creating this kind of a imbalance has done to us. Then finally, he says we'll create a better world not by public effort, but by individual action. So this is not something that the world will come up to, but individual should make an effort. Each individual action will bring about a change. Ruskin describes a simple, wholesome, healthy, and moral way to live our lives. So, in short, by all using these metaphors, using these ideas from workplace, laborers, employers, he is actually propagating for a life that is wholesome, simple, healthy, full of justice and moral ways to live our lives. Lastly, to conclude, I would say that Gandhi derived, and we all can derive the following messages from the book. The good of the individual is contained in the good of all. So each individual is a valuable person in this universe, and we should take care of each individual. Each individual is valued, not just the rich and the powerful and the healthy, but even the poorest of the poor, the old, the destitute, they are also important. Because if we take care of each individual, then it, as I said, it creates a very harmonious whole. The concept of sarvodaya. So this is the concept of sarvodaya. Each good of individual, the welfare of all. The sarvodaya, the welfare of all individual. What is important is we need to take care of all individual. And antodaya, the rise of the last person. The development of people at the lowest level. And the lowest level people have to be brought up. And these were ideas that we have got from Ruskin, And this is what, as I said, that Gandhi has also used very extensively. And that is why probably we value this book so much. This book is always so valuable for us. So I guess we have around 8 to 10 minutes. If we have any questions, we can take that up.
Dear students,
Yes.
I think
Yeah, anybody has
madam's, respected madam's speech, this special lecture made us mesmerized, in the manner in which she covered all the aspects related to unto. The last, I think this is something which is one has to remember. I think it's a package that she has provided in marketing term, I should say. Well, it is well said in Sanskrita, one of the verses, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Bhavantu Niramaya. I think it is the welfare of all, good of all, and Antodaya, rise of the last person. And the manner in which I think respected madam, she covered the book, one has to learn. Even being a learner of language and literature, I learned many things out of this wonderful talk that she delivered today. Well, the manner in which she classified the whole book into the 4 parts, and I noted down certain points out of her this beautiful lecture. And from where I should begin? This is the problem, that it's a treat to listen, and we already enjoyed it, every beat of it. If I would say something further, I think that would some or other way, destroy the beauty of her lecture. Though she has covered, I think, from where Latin words she used each and everywhere, the root of honor, the second, the wells of wealth, and then the justice to all. If I would speak Latin wrongly, she is very much there. She will pull out my ears. And then the 4th way, the according to value. And this is the art of a brilliant, orator or a good communicator. How she, I was, going through the lecture very meticulously, I should say, because there are certain lectures in which you have to be very alert, and you have to, you need not to lose any single beat of it. So the manner in which she collaborated the present circumstances, the situations, she talked about the PPP model, the public-private partnership model. And I think this is the need of the hour. The government can't do anything on its own. Therefore, the lecture ended on a very beautiful note, that it is not something which is related to public. It is the responsibility of individual, that one has to come forward for the welfare of all, for the good of all, and in that manner we can serve our society. And the manner in which I was, I was in doubt whether she is an expert of Gandhian ideology, or she is an expert of feminism, or she is a distinguished scholar of language or literature. I was thinking in all the directions, but she left no clue. She left no stone unturned. And she talked about Gandhism also, the impact of this Ruskin on our Gandhi's philosophy, Gandhian ideology. Gandhi also wanted, and therefore it is quite apparent in his that concept of Sarvodaya, that we need to collaborate all the members of the society. We need to take each and everybody's hands in the development of and not only that, I was having very good examples that she had quoted, and she has given further explanations, like the example she has given from the chemistry, the nitrogen's example, and she related it to her day-to-day life. And she talked about, I think, individual consign. She talked about the greatest good for the greatest number, and the manner in which she defended, the democratic spirits of our nation. That though Ruskin, he was against socialism, and socialism is somewhere is hidden in our society also, but we need to be safeguard or protect ourselves from that. And she very deliberately, I think, only pointed out that, and this is the skills that one has to learn. And from a Fulbright scholar, from a seeker of knowledge, I learned a lot. To be very honest, being a student of language and literature, today I am really learned a lot from her excellent oratory skills, and I'm really thankful. Now, if you have any question or any doubt, I tried to sum up the main ideas. Then we will be having.
Asta has raised her hand.
I think she wants to ask something. Okay,
Yes.
Asta, you are most welcome to ask questions.
Yes, ma'am. I just have one doubt, ma'am. That Gandhiji was greatly influenced by Ruskin's this book on the train journey. We all know that he has himself quoted that this
Yes.
book changed my whole perception and course
Yes.
of my life. And as Sir also pointed out, and you also said that Ruskin completely rejected socialism, and
Yes.
Gandhi's idea of economy was socialist in
Yes.
nature. So, ma'am, what is your opinion on this contradiction?
Actually, I mean, what Ruskin was saying and socialism, uh, it's actually the same thing, I would say. I mean, when I was reading, I too came across this idea that he's against socialism, but it's catching socialism from the other way around. It's actually socialism when you are caring for each one. It's about a society that where you, because if you practice socialism, so that's a form of creating injustice, isn't it?
Right,
Justice is
right.
when you give each person its due, but socialism is giving everybody the equal. So that
Right.
is injustice, isn't it?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
giving each, like for instance, in gender studies, we have a concept called equity,
Equity. Yes, yes,
equality and
ma'am.
equity.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
yeah, so that is it. So basically, that is the difference. That is why Ruskin was against socialism. Even that yeah.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, if any other question, she's very much with us. We should take this opportunity.
You have another class after this, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't have any class. We
Oh,
don't
you
have any
don't have
class
any
for
class.
for these people. For
You
these
have
people,
2 classes a day.
no, only one class a day they
Okay,
have.
1 class a day, 1 class a day,
Yeah,
right?
because
Right.
they have 4 papers. Out of
Okay,
four
okay.
papers, 2 papers are based on written examination. 2 other papers based on their assignments, their activities. Mostly activity based.
Okay, okay, okay.
So if yes, Sumanji wants to ask questions.
Someone will
This
say
question is
something.
No,
actually
no,
from
no,
India.
no. Thank you. No, no
Okay,
question, please.
okay,
Okay.
okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very nicely explained.
So to propose vote of things, it's not, I think, part of a good gesture. It's not a formality, I should say, because
No,
you
no,
are
it's
part,
thank
you are
you.
part and parcel of our extended family. But it's as per our custom and great tradition of our culture. May I now request Asta Shukla to propose vote of things on behalf of Department of English.
Very good afternoon to one and all on this forum. We take this golden opportunity to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am Dr. Nijay Gupta and respected Registrar Professor Dr. Alkesh Chaturvedi for giving us consent to conduct this lecture series, which will benefit us immensely. I extend my most sincere gratitude to our expert speaker, Professor Dr. Anita Singh, for shedding upon us light of her wisdom. We will cultivate what we learned today in our future research as well as in our lives. Thank you very much, ma'am, for this greatly insightful lecture. It has given us much food for the thought. Last but not the least, we extend our heartiest thanks to Professor Dr. Naveen K. Mehta, Head of the Department English, and Dr. Devendra Singh, Head of the Department Sanskrit, for their enthusiastic effort to make this lecture possible. On behalf of all the PhD scholars, we are immensely grateful to each and everyone who are directly and indirectly involved in making this lecture series possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Asta. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice day, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Okay, dear students, kindly remain with me for a few minutes. We need to, talk on certain issues. Like, for example, tomorrow we have another, experts lecture, and it will be Professor Dodia from Rajkot. So now I will give this opportunity because Asta, she has done today, and she has done, I think, brilliantly. She has made it possible. 1 minute. Let me stop the recording part so that we can be more informal.